Hey everyone, Bobbyooch from Throttle Junkyz, and today we're going to be working on a shock setup. Basically what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be using the RPM dual rate shock pistons. Now there was one thing that I found to be a big problem with these. Very good design. Unfortunately, whatever the problem with the manufacturing of them, number one, the way that they're supposed to work is you have what they call a floating piston and a fixed piston. Now, ideally, the way that it's supposed to work is exactly how it sounds. The floating piston floats and the other piston is fixed. So that way when you hit a compression stroke, there's not as many holes in the piston, so it's going to restrict the flow of your shock fluid. So in turn, it's going to be a compression stroke. It's going to hold the fluid. It's going to absorb the shock. Now what happens is that when it rebounds, the floating piston lifts, and then in turn you have a lot more holes. Now as you can see, one of them has 4 holes. Then this one has 6 holes, I believe. Yeah, 6. So now the way it works is on the shaft, the floating piston has a small recess where the E-clip is supposed to fall into. Now I'm going to try and get this to show you, but the E-clip cannot recess in there. It just simply doesn't work. And the other thing is that I have tried these on associated shocks. I've tried them on traxxas shocks. I've tried them on traxxas big bore shocks. I've tried them on aftermarket integer shocks. They do not fit. Don't ask me why. You look up in the book, it says it's supposed to fit all these shocks. They do not. I'm going to show you how to make them fit. First thing we're going to do now, to make this all work properly, E-clip, you got to downsize it. Best thing that I found to do, take your rotary tool, Dremel, something like that, a grinding bit. Basically what you want to do is simply shave off a little bit. So you just want to keep moving it around. So you're just trying to get an even amount of the metal off of it, and that way it can slide into the recess. You want to keep a good look at it and just make sure that you're getting all the edges off, because it's very, very small the amount you have to trim, but nonetheless it needs to be trimmed. Alright. And you want to trim as little as possible because you want it to still have strength. You got to realize this E-clip is what stops your shock from coming down. So you don't want it to be, you don't want to trim so much that it's going to weaken it so much that on a rebound it's just going to snap right off. Okay. So once you've trimmed it down, take your take the floating piston and just make sure it can move around in there. You just want to make sure you can feel some movement, which you can. So the next thing you want to do is we're going to insert our floating piston, and then we're going to insert our fixed piston. We're going to lock them together. Then we'll put in our E-clip. Take care of this real quick. Now it is a very tight fit. But it does fit nonetheless. Okay. So we got the E-clip in there. Now remember, I mean, this is the internal of your shock. You want to make sure that it's on properly. Alright. And you want to make sure that it is in fact floating properly. You want to make sure that it does work. It is floating. Okay. Now you have to take care of the situation of the pistons not fitting the shock. As you can see, does not fit. Okay, very simple what you want to do. Take your rotary tool, once again, take that head out, and then you want to put a sanding wheel. You want to use a large diameter sanding wheel, mainly because you want the piston to spin while you're sanding it. If you use a small sanding wheel, what you're going to do is it's most likely not going to spin, and in turn you're going to dig a hole in the side of it. It's not going to be as true as you want it to. So, once we're all set, just hold the shock shaft. It works perfectly. Make sure it spins freely. That's the main thing. It needs to be able to spin in order for this to work properly. Once it's all set. Now here's the thing. It does not take long to trim what you need to trim. So don't sit there and just lay this Dremel on it. Once you see this thing rotate a few times, take it off and check it. Because once you go too far, you can never get that material back. So. Okay. You can see how it spun, nice and smooth. Okay, make sure you wipe it all off. Okay, it's almost there, not quite. Okay, I'm going to do one more small rotation, only simply because it was fitting, but it was a little more snug than I like. Right there should be perfect. Oh yeah, very nice. Alright, now your floating piston is assembled. They recommend roughly somewhere around 30 to 35 weight, but at the same time they offer you different sizes. Mainly what you want to do is you're going to have to size it out. It's a pain in the butt to take the shocks apart and put them back together again, but realistically it's what you're going to have to do to find that sweet spot. In the front I use the green and using 30 weight. In the rear, I'm using a purple bottom with an orange floater. Tell you the truth, I don't know why I'm telling you that, because that's my little secret, but what the heck. And I run 30 weight in that as well. Now, with the floating piston, the dual stage pistons from RPM, and also a progressive rate traxxas spring, you really get a nice suspension setup out of this. And if you really think about it, what's it cost you? I mean, instead of big bore shocks, they're really not that bad from traxxas. But besides all that, forget about the big bore shocks. Let's think about this. The pistons, I think they're like $3 from RPM. The springs, what are they, $7? So for $10, you can get a really nice shock setup. So with that said, I hope you found this informative. Once again, Bobbyooch from Throttle Junkyz, www.throttlejunkys.com. Hit me up personally, rcfreak21@hotmail.com. And like always, I've always said it, if you're in the Rhode Island area, hit me up if you want to come down the compound and race with the Junkies. Besides that, thank you very much. We'll see you soon. Race hard.